We've got Shaykh Abdul Rahman Ghori. Ah, yele. आ गया Ghori.
Assalamu alaikum मुफ्ती साहब।
वालेकुम अस्सलाम.
मुफ्ती साहब आपने एक दफा आखिरी दफा इनवाइट किया था, अब आपका पीछा नहीं छोड़ेंगे।
क्या बात है
How you
यार.
doing, man?
ये ले फिर. ये आया Ghori.
How you doing? You good?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. Lillah
Alhamdulillah.
alhamd. How are you keeping?
Alhamdulillah, it's like 10, 10 to 5 in Germany. So yeah,
क्या बात है. क्या
yeah.
बात है.
MashaAllah.
Vampires, huh? Vampires. This is it. Awake at these godly hours.
Yeah, you know when I say, you know when I always when people ask me, especially my relatives, they're like, yeah, why are you so active at night and stuff? And it's not good to be raat so nikli pani. And I'm like, you've been telling me stories of some old buzurg, nice people and pious people who've been awake the whole night and tahajjud and this and that. So when I say I'm awake, why is it bad? But yeah.
Because you're awake streaming Netflix.
Yeah.
Don't worry, happens to the best of us. This is
Inshallah,
it.
you have your own show on Netflix one day, inshallah. So
Right
yeah,
now, I just got to stream all these others and just catch up with.
mashallah.
Okay.
Um, Again, your live stream, mashallah, was really really nice, and especially
Shukran.
you said last about what the prophet said and what he said in normal life and stuff, because a lot of people confuse in huwa illa wahyu yuha, that verse. They literally
Mm,
teach you in the mosque and everyone in general, people the imams in the mosque, they teach you that everything the prophet said out of his tongue is from God, so it's like a wahi. So
mm.
in one sense, it is pre-planned, but people think everything he says is deen, and that's where the problem with hadith comes as well, which you highlight
Yeah.
times in the
Because
US.
that's a very good point. And Qarafi, for people who want to read that, you can read Qarafi having this discussion, because it's really the because this, you see, using that verse from Surah Al-Najm, وَمَا يَنْتِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ, that Allah saying that the Prophet does not utter from his whims. In huwa illa wahyun yuha, it is but revelation revealed unto him. Now, sure, now that's absolutely, but that is speaking about them calling his revelation nonsense. Like the kuffar of Quraysh are saying that he's making this up, and Allah is responding by saying that this is not, this is not him making this up, this is being revealed onto him. So this is very different to people saying, like, so for example, let's say the prophet is now shopping, he's buying food, or he's sitting at home, or he's saying, can you pass me this, can you do this, or he's just having a conversation, how are you, what's going on, just day-to-day things. These things are not revelation, these things are just normal life. The Prophet ﷺ is living his life, and it really becomes clear in those examples where those companions ask him that, because that's the best, that they make it very clear, because it's like the woman saying Bariras, the Prophet saying marry Maghith, because Maghith used to follow her around in the streets and he was obsessed with her, and people used to say that, what's, hey, look at him, which is interesting, because you had a man following around a woman who he's not married to, and everybody would say, check him out, and they would all see it. And this was going on in Medina, and even the Prophet saw it, and it was a well-known thing because he was obsessed and madly in love with her. And so the Prophet even said, because he came and he asked the Prophet, look, please, if you ask her, and the Prophet said, look, what, just marry Maghith. And she says, oh, is this revelation? And the Prophet says, no, it's just it's
Yeah.
no. He says, I'm just saying it because, it's just a suggestion. And she says, no, in that case, certainly not. I definitely won't. I mean, she says, And the Prophet actually says, not in that same thing, but he says to the people when they say that, isn't it so mad? Look how madly he is in love with her. He chases her around. Look, there he's going right now. And the Prophet says, isn't it mad that his passion, like how his obsession, like how the energy that he brings in loving her is equally met with the energy she brings for hating him.
SubhanAllah.
And the Prophet says, isn't it like crazy how they're bringing opposite energies of the same strength?
Yeah. The funny,
Yeah.
and the funny thing is the same issue, if you think about it, it's the same issue with Sunnah, right? Which you have brought up as well in the last 3 years, I guess. A lot of times I've heard you, like which you said, like a lot of people can't differentiate between the Sunnah of the Prophet, which he did as a adat, as a habit, or which he did for time and place, and which he
Yeah.
did for religion. And the funny thing is, people criticize you or me generally always because I bring that up and I say there are two kinds of sunnah if you take it. But then the funny thing is, you know yourself, the Salafi ikhtilaf with the topi, with the hat, is the same. They don't, a lot of them don't wear hats. And then a lot
No,
of
they don't yet. They don't recognize the hat as sunnah. No.
some Ahnaf, especially the Ahnaf, they wear turbans and they say the same thing about turban. But when we say turban and topi and maybe some other things, then they, of course, take it like that's too much now. You know? So,
I think the issue is, Sheikh, that it's and by the way, I gotta get you onto a mind trap. Okay, so we are gonna do that. So we are on WhatsApp now. So that's we'll sort that over there. So you see, the thing is that I think people find it really difficult. At what point do they draw the line
exactly.
with devotion?
Yeah.
Like, I'm devoted to something, I really want to do it. At what point do I draw the line in saying, look, it's okay, I'm doing it. I don't have to make you do it. Like, if you see it differently, okay, it doesn't change my devotion. Like, if a person wants to wear a hat, let's say, now, first of all, the Prophet ﷺ didn't used to wear a hat because hats were not the customs of the Arabs. They did wear turbans, though.
Yeah.
So now, okay, but the Prophet never exclusively wore a turban. The Arabs as a whole wore turbans. So, including Quraysh, including the Mushrikeen, everybody wore turbans. It's just all Arabs wore turbans. So, here there was a question that, okay, technically the Prophet often kept his hair covered. Often. Now, did he do this because everybody did it in Arabia? Most people did it. It was a custom. Or did he do it because Islam said? Now, the Prophet never taught us anywhere that we need to cover our heads. Okay, so that's fine. This is why the Maliki madhab does not say that covering your head is sunnah or anything.
Yeah.
Imam Malik, and this is the Maliki madhab. But okay, what if we decide to cover our head out of love for the Prophet because he covered it? So this is now a different issue. So this is saying, look, okay, I recognize this is not something, it's not in the Quran, it's not something that Islam introduced, but because the Prophet always did it. So let's say, for example, and I love the Prophet so much. So what if I did something a bit similar? It's like how people would say today, like you'd see in non-Muslims and other people, like celebrities. People love celebrities. They love Michael Jackson, so they might curl their hair like Michael Jackson. They might say, I'm going to do this. So people say, well, look, we love the Prophet so much, so I'm going to do something extra that he used to do. So let's say he liked dates. I'm going to eat dates.
Which is, of course, beautiful. It's something commendable.
Yeah.
Of course.
And exactly, but that then not knowing where to draw the line in that devotion, because that devotion is a personal thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's not, Islam has not even asked you to do it, but if you do it, the niyyah the fact that you have this much love for the Prophet, that is highly commendable. And that niyyah is something which we celebrate, that intention. And we say that, Allah blesses you, blesses that intention. But the action in and of itself is not an Islamic action. So just as the Prophet, for example, he, lived in Arabia. So if a person says, well, I'm going to live in Arabia because the Prophet lived in Arabia. Now, Islam has not asked them to go move to Arabia, but if they did it, that's them. That's not an Islamic act. That might be their personal devotion.
Yeah.
As a person, they're doing it. Islam has not asked them, but sure, their intention is a different thing, but it doesn't make the act Islamic. And I think this differentiating here is where a lot of these people find it difficult. It becomes too clouded. Like they think, well, because it's being celebrated, the intention, therefore the act has become Islamic.
Yeah.
And I think, unfortunately, as well, this is a misplaced love. It is a love, but it's a misplaced love.
There was this discussion. Okay, I do admit I think it was too much for the people to handle what I said, but there was a discussion, and we were discussing exactly that topic, and they said, yeah, but it's still a sign of a Muslim if you walk like this, and if you have the jubba, and these, you can imagine. I'm sure you've been in that position where you just look at those people who are discussing with you, and you're like, this is so much stupidity, these arguments. Which one shall I tackle first? And I just bursted out and I said, yeah, but you do know that whatever the signs you're describing, Abu Jahl wore the same things.
Clothes. Yeah, the clothes of the clothes of the Prophet were just the clothes of his time. He never, so it wasn't that the Prophet.
Yeah.
So for example, when, let's say, strangers or people came from Persia and these places, they couldn't tell who the Prophet was. He wasn't distinguished in the sense that he wasn't somebody that wore a particular clothes. And like you could tell, oh, that person is like the VIP. He wasn't. He was just wore what everybody wore. Just wore what Arabs wore. And so there's nothing Islamic about that, about being an Arab. But obviously the love is in its own place. But then and I think this is more difficult for us, like desis sometimes to differentiate, because and I think sometimes some groups, maybe with their whatever, like I said, it's a misplaced love, and they've kind of pushed it so hard. Like people like sometimes the Tablighi Jamaat, they've kind of pushed things like this so hard in saying that everything is a sunnah, sitting on the floor is a sunnah, not using a spoon is a sunnah because the Prophet never used a spoon, using it, like they've just turned everything
and
into...
that is the problem. Like, for example, especially when you live in a country like Germany, like of course in England it's a bit different, if you don't mind me saying, because I've lived there for like 7 years. But in England it's still like the Indo-Pak have dominated the Muslim scene over there. So that's when you see Birmingham, or you see like Blackburn or Leicester or some parts of London, they have like Ahnaf have dominated everything. So sometimes the thinking over there is very okay. Regent's Park Mosque is different, but except of that, a lot of East London and stuff. But like in our communities here, for example, Germany or Italy, Netherlands, because Arabs, there are a lot of Arabs, there are a lot of Turkish people. So you see, I've grown up with every single madhab. That's so hard for me. Every time I used to come back from Darul Uloom, they used to ask me questions to every madhab. And I didn't know this, of course, so I had to get prepared, in every madhab. And I remember Mufti Saab, where the small incident, like that's a thing that happens so many times. There was an Arab, and he like in Pakistan, or like Afghani people, or like from Bangladesh and stuff, they don't put the Quran even in the mosque. They don't put it on the carpet. They put it on the shelf. Even when they're like chilling on the floor, they won't put it on the floor, like on the carpet, on the mosque carpet. Not on the floor, So they won't. Even that they
Yeah.
won't. Arabs don't. They just do, like, for example, they read the Quran and there is a sajda part which comes, they do a sujood, and then they
This,
put
yeah,
the Quran for once.
on the floor. Yeah, yeah.
And there was this guy and
I'm
he
not.
was,
I'm not saying I'm not saying all Arabs, but I have seen that in several Arab countries that I've been to. Yeah,
so there was a fight because there was one guy, he kept
there
came
was
to
a
me.
fight. Then there was a fight.
That
That's just like,
and he said, "Shame on yourself! How can you put the Quran on the floor?" And he's like, "There is nothing wrong on putting it on the carpet." And he's like, "Oh, astaghfirullah, and you're doing this to the Quran. You don't have any respect for." And of course, Arabs are hot-blooded. And he was like, "How dare you saying I don't have respect for the Quran?" So,
you know, there was sometimes this is done with what happens is you get this reactionary. Okay, so there's two different things here. One is just like somebody, like a pure innocence, like somebody's in a masjid. It's not a dirty place, it's a very clean place. Nobody walks in with shoes on. Even in the Arab world, people don't go in with shoes, and it's a very clean carpet, and they're sitting themselves on the floor, and they then think, look, they're holding a mushaf, and then because they're about to pray, they just, there's nothing nearby, they just put it on the floor next to them on the prayer mat, and they just pray. Now, obviously, in the desi world, we generally wouldn't do that, because we would see that as like, oh no, this is very disrespectful. But okay, to them, that's fine. This is a nice clean place. This is a prayer mat. I'm putting it on there. But then I've also seen in my time, I've seen people, maybe to make a point of there's nothing wrong with putting the Quran down, doing that on purpose. I remember many years back, there used to be da'wah. People used to do da'wah in the city centers, and used to have some of the very kind of like passionate, back then the Salafis that were like, we're doing da'wah and very passionate and stuff. So, and I remember in Birmingham, I remember the outside the library, the old library, they used to have these steps, and people used to do that with it. And so back then, I was just a teenager, and I was really impressed by these people, because obviously all these people had embraced Islam, and many of them were converts as well. So I do excuse them that, I'm sure they probably had only been Muslim maybe a year or something, but they had the whole garb, the whole gear, they were proper, the Saudi scarves and preaching. They knew the Arabic word. They knew much more than me about Islam back then. I was just a teenager. They would say, Abu Hanifa did this, and Al-Bukhari, and I don't know any of this. I was like, no idea what you're talking about. But I remember that they, like, while speaking, they would read from the Quran and stuff. And to be honest, I'd never even read the Quran in English at that point as a kid. And these people know these verses and they can quote it. And I was so kind of wowed. And then they would just get the Quran and just put it on the floor by the steps of the thing. And they would just carry on. And I remember actually as a kid, as a teenager, I actually went to them and said that, I remember saying to them that, look, I must have been about 17 or something. So I said to them that, oh, look, brother, can you, like, I tried to pick it up, and they said to me, what are you doing? And I said that, oh, this, this is on the floor. And they said, what about it? And I said that, oh, you can't put the Quran on the floor. It's like, why not? Well, what's wrong? It's a book. Like, obviously, I'm not disrespecting putting it on the floor. Like, and I remember they would do that consistently. It wasn't like just and I don't know whether that was, but sometimes there's this kind of almost a bravado to say, well, to say, yeah, that maybe you cultural people are kind of too wrong with your culture, so we're going to go the other way to prove a point.
Yeah.
And of course, I do take into consideration that this is only, this is a small sample. I can't say this is representative of all Salafis that do that or anything, but these were some people that I saw. And yeah, but yeah, the thing in the masjid, I can imagine the fights breaking out.
That time, if people come to you, and then you have to, calm down first, both of them and stuff, and so it is a very
fun and games, huh?
Yeah,
fun and games.
There have been a lot of it. I remember I did one Jummah, and then one guy came and he said, everyone, and he got criticized because he used to pray his Sunnah at home. So people were like, he's Wahhabi. Because So
Yeah, I mean, you have madness the other way. You have this thing that in
because
the
they
other way
home,
where people,
and then
but they
he
will
said,
also make you do nafal, and you got to do, if you don't do a certain amount of nafal prayer, then you're not, like people go the other way as well, like with their strictness and imposing, I suppose, especially here. I mean, maybe not so much in Germany, but they'll have this cultural stuff, like a person like this salah is 17 rak'at, and if you don't do all these, then you're a Wahhabi, basically, if you're not praying all of these. And
like I
yeah.
said, he said to them, "Listen, it's Sunnah. I can pray at home. It's okay. The Prophet used to do it." And then they said, "Oh my God, he's a Wahhabi, Wahhabi." And then, to calm the people down, he's like, "Imam Sahib is coming at, referring to me. He's like, at Jummah, he's gonna do khutbah. So after the khutbah, we'll go to him and we'll clear this matter." And everyone was like, "Okay, okay, okay." So he's like, "I'll show you I'm not a Wahhabi." That they went there. And after Juma, they came to me, made a circle, and they're like, "Yeah, we have a question." I'm like, "What's up?" And he's like, "Yeah, I used to pray. I pray my Sunnah at home and stuff." And I told them, and they said, "You're criticizing me." And I looked at everyone, and I'm like, "No, no, it is Sunnah." And then he said, "See, after the mosque," and then people were like, "Imam Sahib bhi Wahhabi ho gaye." I said, "So like, he's a Wahhabi too. That's it." So,
Well,
you probably
yeah.
have a lot of guests. So,
No, well, I might just take one more and then wrap this up today. But yeah, but shukran, Sheikh Ghori Saab. We got to catch up. Take care. Stay blessed. Much love. Assalamu alaikum, people. That was Sheikh Abdurrahman Ghori from Germany. All right. So